Hello, and welcome to Miss Mo Storyteller, where we travel the world through stories. No passport required. Let's get going. Before we begin our story, I want you in your mind to picture a river, a crystal clear, beautiful river with green grass on both sides and a mountain in the distance. And as we picture the river, we're going to take 2 deep breaths. When we breathe in, the river is going to swell and get bigger and go over the grassy edges. And when we breathe out, it's going to go back to a normal river. Are you ready? Here we go. Deep breath. One more big river breath. Let's get started. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go with Miss Mo. 2 more. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go with Miss Mo. Last time. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go with Miss Mo. Shh. Every Saturday night for 20 years, the old man and the old woman held hands and walked beside the river to the shrine of their ancestors in Japan. Every Saturday night they made an offering, they lit a candle, and they prayed the same prayer, begging their ancestors for one thing: a baby of their own. It had been 20 years and no baby. And tonight, as they held hands, they looked at each other and agreed this would be the last time they would ask for this miracle. They blew out the candle and turned and began to walk along the river home. But then they heard a cry. It was very small and very hard to hear, but it was a cry. And they looked all around, and there, under a large, trembling green lotus leaf, there was a tiny baby boy. And I mean tiny. He was only 1 inch big. But he was perfect, and they knew that he was theirs. The answer had come. They had their own tiny baby. They bent over and gently scooped him into their hands, and they named him, little 1 inch, Issun Bochi. And they carried him home, and they fed him little drops of milk and little drops of water, and they blended up rice and gave him little drops of rice pudding. Oh, and he grew. He grew strong. He grew smart. He grew kind. He grew fast. He just didn't grow tall. He stayed just 1 inch. Little Issun Bochi. But every night his mother would scoop him in her hand, and she would rock him back and forth, and she would sing to him, Issun Bochi, you are small, but your soul is big and tall. Issun Bochi, kind and smart, your greatest power is your heart. And it was. He was brave, he was kind, he was smart, and he was ready for adventure. He told his parents it was time to go. He needed to see the world, and his mother cried, and his father cried, "No, you'll get gobbled up by a gopher. You'll get chased by a rat. You can't go, you're too small." And Issun Bochi took a deep breath. And he looked at his mother, and he sang to her, Issun Bochi, I am small, but my soul is big and tall. I'm Issun Bochi, kind and smart. My greatest power is my heart. And it was. And they agreed. His mother gave him a brand new, shiny, sharp needle that he stuck in the belt of his pants like a sword. And then they carried him to the river in a little carved wooden bowl for a boat with a chopstick for a paddle. And crying, they set him in the river and said goodbye. And Issun Bochi began to glide down the river, and he felt the wind in his hair and the splash of the water, and then his boat got flipped over by a frog, a hungry frog who had been watching this strange little bug in a wooden boat paddling with a chopstick, and he wanted to see how it tasted. But Issun Bochi was no bug. He pulled his sword, and as the frog swam with his eyes just above the water, Issun Bochi pulled back his sword and stabbed him right in the eyeball. Well, the frog was not ready for that. He pulled away and he swam in the opposite direction, and Issun Bochi paddled and he paddled and he swam until he could grab just one blade of grass. And with his needle sword still stuck in his belt, he climbed that blade of grass and fell on the riverbank. When he looked up, he saw a gate that was guarding a castle, and he knew this must be the home of a powerful Japanese lord. Just the place for a warrior like him. And so he pounded on the gate. He had to use both hands and his knees and his feet and his head to make enough noise, but eventually the servant at the gate heard him. And he opened the gate and looked around and saw nothing. So Issun Bochi shouted, I'm here! Look down!" And the servant did, and there was a strange little young man. "What do you want?" he asked. And Issun Bochi said, "I am here to serve the Lord. Please fetch him." Well, the servant was so impressed with the courage and the valor of this little tiny man that he went and fetched the Lord. The Lord came back and almost laughed when he saw this little tiny warrior. "How can you serve me?" he asked. "Who are you?" And Issun Bochi took a deep breath and he sang out, "I'm Issun Bochi, yes, I'm small, but my soul is big and tall. I'm Issun Bochi, kind and smart. My greatest power is my heart." That's right. And the Lord knew that was true. He recognized greatness in this little warrior. So he hired him. "Yes, you'll do perfectly. You will be my daughter's personal bodyguard." And so Issun Bochi began to work for the princess. She carried him everywhere she went in his pocket, his sword ready to defend her. She read him books, he sang her songs, she made a little bed for him on a satin pillow in her jewelry box. They became the best of friends. One morning, the princess decided she wanted to go to the shrine and make an offering to her ancestors. So Issun Bochi grabbed his sword, hopped in her pocket, and they were off. But as they drew closer to the shrine, they smelled a smell like mold and wet dog and old soup and danger. And out from the shrine stomped an enormous troll. He was drooling and growling, and he spun his magical club over his head. He was coming for the princess, but the troll did not know about Issun Bochi in her pocket. Issun Bochi drew his sword, jumped out, and began stabbing the troll's toes. But you may not know this. Well, trolls' toes are very thick and very leathery, and he didn't even feel Issun Bochi. So Issun Bochi, while the troll was chasing behind the screaming princess, climbed up the troll's hairy legs and hairy stomach and hairy armpits until he got to the troll's ear. And then he pulled his sword and he stabbed the troll right in the ear, and the troll was so surprised by this sharp pain that he opened his mouth to roar. And when he opened his mouth, Issun Bochi jumped inside Well, the princess nearly fainted away, thinking that the troll had eaten her best friend. But she didn't know that Issun Bochi had a plan. He began slashing and spiking and cutting and scraping and stabbing over and over and over. And that, even for a troll, hurt a lot. He was so surprised by the sudden pain in his mouth that he dropped his magical club and he spit Issun Bochi out on the grass and ran into the woods. Well, Issun Bochi was covered in blood and troll spit, but he was safe. The princess cleaned him up, and then she picked up the magical club. She began spinning it over her head, and she made a wish. She wished that Issun Bochi could grow tall. And every time she circled that club over her head, Issun Bochi grew an inch, and an inch at a time. He grew and he grew until he and the princess looked at each other, eye to eye. And when they looked at each other, eye to eye, well, they fell in love. They were in love. And the princess's father was thrilled. What a wonderful husband for his daughter. So brave, so kind, so loyal. And so they were married. And they lived very happily. They always kept the magical club hidden and safe, because every once in a while they would take it out and they would spin it over their head, and they would wish for both of them to become very, very small. And then they would jump into Issun Bochi's old wooden bowl as a boat, and the princess had her own chopstick. And together they would row down the river to adventures. Because there are some wonderful things about being small. I hope you like that story. What would you do if you were as small as Issun Bochi? Thanks for listening. Let's say goodbye. Miss Mo, Miss Mo, Miss Mo has got to go. 2 more, Miss Mo, Miss Mo, Miss Mo has got to go. Last time, Miss Mo, Miss Mo, Miss Mo has got to go. Bye! I hope you enjoyed that story. If you want to hear more stories, subscribe so you don't miss a single one. Also, you can go to my Patreon page, look for Miss Mo Storyteller, and you'll find more resources to explore these countries with crafts, recipes, and lots of other stories and books. Thanks for coming. I'll see you next time. For now, keep telling stories.